Okay, we're still holding the Siman Summit Tzadik Ches, Halacha Taaruvot, Sif Daled. Instead of going on to Sif Hey, which is a different idea altogether, I figured it would be a good idea to review the main nekudas, the main points of the Daled, in the words of the Mechaber and in the Ramah. There's quite a bit of a Ramah. And in actually doing the review myself, when I was going through my notes, going through the sugyas, I realized that we actually could use a good review about certain points that, even though they will come up later in Hilchos Taaruvot, in Siman Kuf Hey actually, since they're somewhat mentioned here, some of the concepts are mentioned, we need to have at least an understanding about the concepts. And the concepts that I'm talking about is Kovush, Melicha, and I mentioned Iroi as well. So just briefly, for those who were not here, just a quick review. We're talking about forbidden mixtures, Isushin is Bashalim Heter, and even though there is the concept of Bitul meaning that an Isur somehow, I'm going to use a fancy word, extirpated. Do you know that one, Ilan?
No, but yeah. I think Shalom does.
Yeah. We have been able to extirpate, to remove the Isur altogether, somehow, either through Bitul Beroiv or Bitul Beshishim. Shishim is more of a question of Tam, which is in some ways a different concept than Bitul Beroiv. Because Bitul Beroiv, as we said before, is learned from Achre Rabbim Lahatois, you go by the majority, and according to the Rosh, it's a Chidush also. The Chidush is that the Heter becomes, the Isur becomes Heter. In other words, a Roiv, and Roiv, and Roiv. The Isur becomes Heter. Not everybody holds like that exactly.
That's the Rosh, no?
That's the Rosh, yeah, and others who would go along with that too, possibly, a couple more, Poiskim. And this could be a nafkamina, as we will see later on in Hilchos Taaruvot. It could be a nafkamina. Nafkamina knows a difference of how you hold. What is Bitul really doing? But especially if it's roiv, we're dealing with situations where there's no tam. Once you're dealing with tam, it's a whole different sugya. Tam ki ikar. We have a flavor. What's exactly going on? Is it possible to get rid of? And we've gone through a little bit of the scenarios where tam is involved, whether you could get away with less than shishim. Because shishim, we said, is just a concept of general statistics. That if you have 60 times, most likely the time is gone. Most likely the time is gone. After all, 60 is a lot. And if we're concerned with the time, if time is kicker, then 60 is enough. What happens if you have less than 60? It could be you won't feel the flavor. So how could you determine that? So we went through the sugya of kefela, with those who hold you can use a non-Jewish cook, chef, who may be familiar somewhat whether there's flavor or not by tasting it. And the shita that holds, yes, it's a good idea, it actually works, even though we usually don't use goyim for testimony. This is not a real testimony. Just that the Ramah says, you know what, we don't use kfela these days. For a variety of reasons, you just don't use it. But technically, you could use it. You could use it in certain circumstances. If you had to, maybe you could. So that was the inyan of 60. But what do we really learn from that? That it is possible, and that's what the sheet of the Mechaber, the Rambam really, is that if there is no flavor, if you've determined there is no flavor, you don't really need 60. Okay? The Ramah holds no matter what, you're going to need 60. But that's a very important point, because 60 is lav dafka. In other words, you can get away with it in some situations if somehow you're able to determine that the Isur is not there. Now listen to these words carefully. Somehow you can determine that the Isur is not there, it's gone. Now we were used to till now in figuring on a kefela, but somehow I was able to, I believe, the Fiani is deity, that maybe this concept of an Isur potentially not being there less than 60 can apply in our case of the Ramah too, where he gives the suggestion of how to remove an Isur. So just remember that in the back of your mind. After all, we want the Isur to be gone, right? And sometimes, if the Isur is still there somehow, then Bitul doesn't really help. Bitul does not help if the Isur is Be'ein, if I can identify the Isur, because regardless of why the Bitul, as we said, there's different ideas behind Bitul, how Bitul works, but everybody would agree. Everybody would agree. If you see the Isur, if it's still there somehow, there's no Bitul. What about if there's Tam beyond 60? we also said that in many cases, according to many, even if there's tam, but if it's beyond 60, it's a tam kolush. It's a very, very light tam, and it wouldn't really make a difference. That's not all. Why? Because I can taste something, but it doesn't. That's not called tam. Even though you can taste, so what if you can taste a little bit? You have a good, sensitive tongue. That doesn't mean that that's tam ke'ikar. Tam ke'ikar means that it's like the real McCoy, it's like the real Isser. Well, if you have 60, then forget about it. But obviously, if the kafela is going to tell you that there is tam, the 60 is not going to make a difference either. You see what I mean? If you're going to be using a kafela, so depending on which shita you hold. But somehow, if there's no tam under 60, it should be mutter. Technically, it's not there. So in the beginning of Sif Dalad, we spoke about this detail that even if you have bitul, if you're makir the iser, if you identify the iser, v'hu sholem, v'zorko tzorech shishim keneged kol ha'isur. Now we didn't really talk about sholem. All the Mechaber says is that you have to get rid of it. And even though you got rid of it, it was there long enough to be poilet atam, that's what you need shishim keneged kol ha'isur. So we have here a diyuk in the Mechaber that it's kol ha'isur. That's very important. Why is that important? That we know that we have to be mishar keneged kol ha'isur. What if it's an isur balua? Right? Would it make a difference? Of course it would. Here we are making the assumption, especially according to the Mechaber, that it's a real isur. It's a piece of bacon. Standalone isur. We don't know about isur baluas yet here. What's an isur balua? A piece of kosher meat that once upon a time fell on its own to dairy. I'm sorry, let's not use. Well, we could use dairy. Depending, it fell into something that made that kosher piece of meat asur. It could have been dairy, it could have been something else, something treif, and therefore it has a blia. It has absorbed some flavoring, and it's asur obviously because it in itself was not 60 times as big in volume against the isur, so it has become asur. So then there is a scenario which is discussed in halacha where if that piece of isur once again would fall in to another pot, how are we mishayr? How are we going to calculate? Are we going to calculate against the entire piece? It's a kosher piece of meat. It just has some blia, or just against the blia. We know exactly. We happen to know in that case how much blias there are. A little bit, just a little bit of flavoring. I mean, you were cooking something by mistake. Or you weren't cooking. The goy was cooking, right? And it fell in, and you can see how much the volume is. A couple just ounces of non-kosher stew or whatever it is. So how much did it absorb already? So sometimes you can determine that. We're not such great experts, but let's say you were. So in the case in our case, it didn't fall into a non-kosher stew; it fell into a kosher stew. So falling in the kosher stew, that's forbidden isur. The original forbidden isur only has a blia. So the question is what? The question is, first of all, do we say chanan? For those of you who are familiar already by now with chanan, chaticha naset nevela, is that whole piece asur, or just it is also for me to eat because it in itself does not have the necessary volume to cancel out the isur. But in reality, once it falls into another kedera, I don't need to calculate against the whole thing because I know exactly how much it has. So the question is of chanan. Do we say chanan b'shar isurim, other than basar v'chalav? And there's a question later on of ef shel esochtoi. As far as that piece itself, which is a separate question, right? Ef shel esochtoi means it once again fell into a big, big pot. And the big, big pot for sure has 60 times against a small little piece. Will that small piece once again become heter? Is that possible? That it was usher for a day or two, now, or whatever, it fell in again, boom, the 60 times, we were able to get out all the time of isser that was there. Because we have so much liquid here, maybe it dilutes the whole thing even from the original piece. That's an interesting sugya in itself of ef shel esochtoi, do we say that or not? Now, there are some that associate hanan with ef shel esochtoi. It's a similar concept. Then it was that piece that once has become asur remains asur.
Well, if you say ef shel esochtoi, I would think you can't avoid.
Yeah, but is it for the same reason or not? That's the question. And there's some nafkaminas, because there are shitas that hold there's no chanan in shar isurim, and I still say ef shalasochter. Everybody get that? There are some shitas that hold. I don't say chanan b'shar isurim. The mechaber doesn't hold chanan b'shar isurim, and he himself agrees later on with the shita of ef shalasochter. That piece remained usher. It's usher. Why? Eventually we'll get to it. It's not that important. Whatever. That it's usher. It remained usher. You had one chance. There was not enough the first time, and it became forbidden for you to eat. Now somehow that piece which you were supposed to throw away, or give it to the maid, or to the dog, unless it's basar b'chalav, you can't have hanoah from it, right? Right? Somehow it was sticking around. You didn't get rid of it. Which reminds me of a funny story. Yes, no, you're right.
The reason I'm asking is if it's chanan.
Good question. The din of chanan.
Because wouldn't that give it to the shiksa?
You're right. Chanan is not asur b'hano. You're right. That's a good point. Even though you hold chanan,
Bashar
isurim, even by basar b'chalav, there's no isur hano on chanan.
Because I think it's a derabbanan.
Yes, very good point. Yes, even by basar, you're right. Yeah, the concept of chanan is a derabbanan. So very good point. And therefore, even by basar b'chalav, there would be no isur hano. Yeah, so therefore
How did it become chanan?
Huh?
How did it become chanan by basar b'chalav? If it cooked together, then it's around because of the cooking together.
Yeah, but later on, it's kashar isurim. Initially,
that's a machlokes.
Yeah.
That's a
Initially, you understood that, what I just said right now. Initially, Ilan is right. Initially, something becomes also because of basar b'chalav, then it's basar b'chalav. Its question is later on. Later on.
Now it's only relevant because the whole top show. Okay, sorry.
Right.
You were going to tell me.
Yeah.
Stop me.
Yeah. No, there was a question about, let me see if I can remember the details. Somebody was getting smicha from a Rav, and he asked him all kinds of questions, and he saw that he knew the halachas very, very well. And then this lady comes in with a big question. She had, let's see if I can remember. She had several chickens. One of them was treif. And the rest were kosher. But she somehow, left behind the legs of the chickens. In other words, the chicken, the treif chicken was, of course, is no longer there, but the legs of the chicken remained behind. And she's now confused what to do with the legs of the chicken, because some of them are kosher for sure, and some of them are treif. And what you had here was, let's see if there were 4 chickens, I think. You had, or 3 chickens. It was for sure roiv kosher. Okay? And the rabbi asked this new student, okay, go ahead and paskin the shaila. So he says everything is asur. So the Rav told the woman, he separated the left and right feet of the chicken. The Rav separated the left and right feet.
She brought them with him?
Yeah, she brought them with him. The Rav separated the left and right feet of the chicken, and he basically pointed out that, these legs are kosher, and these legs are asur. Okay? I just don't remember right now the exact detail. And he says, and he was telling the Talmud, you got to know these things, that you can tell that there's a difference between left and right legs of a chicken. And therefore, let me see if I can remember the detail exactly what it was, that somehow, some of the legs were for sure kosher. Some of the legs were for sure kosher. He was able, I just don't remember exactly how it worked out again. Maybe the next time I remember. Somehow he was able to eliminate that which, is potentially asur. But it doesn't mean that the whole thing is asur. In other words, somehow through being able to distinguish, if you have a certain amount of kosher legs, right, and even though one of them was treif, right, each one had, was it a right and a left? I can't recall right now. But anyway, what's the point of the story? He was able to figure it out and says, these are for sure kosher and this is treif. The point is that it could happen in the kitchen, that something treif was left behind. That remind me, and I'll tell you the exact detail next week. Some things can be left behind if you don't get rid of them on time, and then they get mixed up. You have to watch out for this. Anyway, so here, in our situation, it could be that it was left behind. And it was left behind, and it fell in again. If it has an Isur Belua. That's the situation. Where you have an Isur Belua, it could be it was left behind, and that's what causes a problem again. In our Seif, however, we're not talking about Isur Belua. It's clear that the Mechaber says, V'hu Sholem, V'zorko Tzor Shishin Keneged Kola Isur. Nothing to do with Isur Belua. You need 60 times against the whole Isur. We're assuming that it's a real Isur. There's nothing that was a Blia in it. But it's Sholem. Why Sholem? Anybody wanting to guess? Why would the Mechaber have to say Sholem here? What if it's not Sholem? What does it mean? Sholem means intact. Intact means, Poshet means that you can easily remove it. If it's not easily removable, like you use the blender, even though you know the Isser, they see small little things there, see something, it's not a real Isser Be'in. It's too difficult to filter out. If it's too difficult to filter out, then it's not called an Isur Sholem. You follow, Ilan?
Yeah,
if it's not, that's the point here. It's not. That's the point. It's not easy to filter out. Then it's not called an Isur Sholem that you have to do. Yeah.
He said, "Who Sholem?"
Right.
Can it be? Are those Sholem the same thing?
Makira just means that you can identify it.
Right, but it sounds like you can't identify it and it's not Sholem.
Yeah, that's why I asked. Really, what's the purpose of saying Sholem?
Maybe you want to. I think this is me. Maybe
yeah.
That afilu makiru v'hu sholem. This is the best possible scenario. The thing is complete, and you recognize it, and you threw it out. Now you know for sure there is not a shred, not a little piece of this Esser left in the pot, and still you need 60. That's what he's trying to say.
That's also.
He's not saying you found half the piece. Maybe there's another half still floating around somewhere. It could be a few pieces. It's even shalom. The whole thing is out. Yeah. It's gone.
I would agree with you that could also be inferred from what the Mechaber says. Yeah, obviously. Because what is the really? I only added that as a diuk, not necessarily that's what the Mechaber had in mind. It's just an additional diuk that's what shalom would also mean. But Ilan is right, because here ultimately the Mechaber's aim is to tell us that even if it's completely gone, and I would think, well, it's completely gone, it's mutter. No, but there's tam, and we don't know how much tam. And we don't know how to figure out the time, therefore we have to calculate connected the whole thing. So you're right as far as the aim of the Mechaber. No, that could be. That's at least definitely probable. That's what he's aiming at. Because if you have left over, then what did you accomplish? If you have pieces,
then it's more of a stubborn that you still have a problem.
You still may have a tom. You may have exactly, yeah. But I was saying something that is also brought down in the poskim. That the idea of shalom is that it cannot be filtered out. In other words, as opposed to not being able to be filtered out, and here you can remove it completely, which is really, if you think about it, it's all one thing. Mm-hmm. It's there. It's not in pieces. I can take it out. It's not going to pose a problem. Supposedly, it is going to pose a problem because we have tam, residue. And the residue may not be in pieces, shredded, but it could be in flavor. So anyway, the halacha that the Mechaber wants to bring out over here is even if an isur that was be'ein was removed, which you would have to remove, if you see it, there's no bitul, you still have to deal with the tam and how much? Keneged kola isur. Why? And he tells us the reason we don't know how much came out. That nobody knows. That nobody can know. That's a fact. All right? So therefore, the Mechaber adds one more detail, that even if it's not an Isser in itself, if we're talking about pots, pans, spoons, that are the ones that have the Isser, you were going to make Hagala to the pot. You were going to make Hagala to the spoons. But the mistake you forgot. What do you do if a fleshik pot, you cooked dairy in it? There are two issues. Is the food mutter? And what happens to the pot? Two separate issues. The food could be mutter because of tam lefgam, but the pot is still a problem. Even though it's tam lefgam, it's still a problem. I have now dairy in meat in this pot. Now, of course, the meat or whatever blia was in the pot is already poking, but still I can't use it for either or right now. I have to do hagala if I can. Same thing with spoons. It happens. My wife, if it ever happens to her, she puts it aside. You know what? We've got to do hagala to it. You know, just like you buy new kalim that require tevilah, you put them aside. So something happens, you put it aside, you're going to take care of it. Libun, hagala, whatever is necessary. What? Go ahead.
1 crock pots.
7 crock pots? Okay, to show. That's for a lot of people, 7 crock pots. Yeah, okay. Okay.
And went from black kosher to kosher.
Oh, he downgraded. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And the shul wouldn't accept it, but
In the crock pots.
What happened was I had to not only buy the other 72 people who wanted it,
Right.
I still couldn't understand the reason because the residue, it's...
The crock pot is a problem because you may not be able to make it kosher if it's made out of porcelain or whatever it is.
Can't do hagala.
You can't do hagala on it.
Right.
Exactly.
But then if you're cooking a whole new meat more, then whatever residue might be in that...
Oh, no, not necessarily. No, we've covered that before, that many times, the majority of the times, you never have enough in the volume in the pot, whether it's cholent or, whatever it is, to get rid of all the flavor that has been absorbed in the pot. You don't have 60 times as much.
So clarify, we're not talking about substance actually, but only taste without any substance. And to get rid of taste, you need cooking in the pot, as the thickness and height of the wall.
I understand.
So the mathematicians say that very rarely do you actually get a pot that has thin walls and is wide enough that you have 60 times as much content as very rarely.
Very rarely.
Certainly
So-
not in a crock pot.
So it would be a problem for those who eat glatt only. That this may not be kosher even, according to them. It may not be. But you don't want to take a chance. So we would have to be strict with concerning any food that was cooked in there, plus with the pots and pans.
But if it's down,
It's also, according to some people, this might be completely treif.
That's bimino.
As far as what
Bimino, with in the walls of the pot,
Right.
taste coming, even if it was treif meat. That's definitely.
Oh, you're saying if somebody
It's
were to
bimino.
cook again in those
Yes,
pots? Yes.
it's bimino.
Right.
So
If
why
somebody
would-
were to
yeah.
cook again in those pots, then the question would not
You
be.
only need
You would
oil.
also have a suffix, sveka perhaps. You would have many svekas here.
Yeah, so-
It's kosher. Maybe it is kosher.
Yeah, so
It wouldn't be a question. I'm not talking about the food, right? The first food that was not
the first food had to go.
it's not glatt, right?
But how about the pots?
And same thing with the pots. Yeah, same thing with the pots.
It's min bimino. Okay, it's min bimino. We're gonna cook meat again in it.
Yeah, but now we're talking about lechatchila. Yeah, we're talking about lechatchila only. It's only a question of lechatchila. These are pots, if a goy cooks in your pot, you have to also make a gala, right? No, similarly, you would need to, but sometimes you can't make a gala, so it could be a problem. Yeah. Right. Anyway, it's okay. Crock pots are used. Yeah. All right. So we're talking about leficha mevashel bekderat isur shehi bat yoma, if it was used within the last 24 hours, right? So the pot here is in this case the pot is the isur, or tochev kaf shel isur beheter. You used a spoon which had become asur in heter. You would also need tzarich samach keneged kol hagdera, keneged kol ma shetochav me'akaf. You would need 60 times against the entire pot or against the entire spoon. Why against the entire spoon? So he says you don't necessarily need keneged kol hakav. You need keneged kol ma shetochav me'akav. So that's what the mechaber is quite clear here that he holds. In the first, he has two opinions. He brings down both opinions. In the first opinion, at least, he holds kol ma shetochav me'akav she'enanu yodin kama bolo. We don't know how much it absorbed. Benchim shel cheres or eitz, regardless of the material. Now, so in the first opinion, he holds that when we're talking about a spoon, just a spoon, example, if you know exactly how much you stuck in, that's how much you need against. You don't really need to figure out the entire spoon, volume-wise. The problem is sometimes we don't know. Since we don't know, you figure according to the whole thing. But he does bring the second sheet of yesh mishemach bekaf shel mateches. Some are strict if it's metal spoon. Lehatzuk samach keneged kulo. We have a klal cham miktzos cham kulo. Part of it is hot. If it's metal, metal conducts heat, and therefore, at some point, the whole thing becomes hot. The whole thing becomes hot. you need 60 against the whole spoon. Mechaber doesn't hold like that, as it's brought down in Basar B'chalav 2, this halacha, that if you know exactly how much you put it down, you stuck it in, you need it until that point, until that level. Okay, so far so good. Now, here comes the chidush here. The chidush here is that that's true by bishul. By bishul, meaning what? Bishul, you're cooking something, you're mixing something, so you have to figure according to the entire amount that was inserted. But what if it's not bishul? What if it's al yedei retichas melicha, which is the example of the Ramah? The Ramah says earlier, before the second opinion of the Mechaber, that as long as it was cooked, it was boiling. But if there is retichas melicha, there is the heat being emitted or being generated through melicha, through salt. It does generate some heat. It's a problem in Hilchas Melicha when if you salted non-kosher meat together with kosher meat, Melicha is a problem. But in a keli, Melicha is not such a problem. Why? A little bit goes into the keli. How much? Kedei klipa. So all you need 60 times keneged a klipa. That's good. That's a lot less of a problem. Melicha is not as powerful as heat. Not only is it not as powerful as heat, in this situation, it's not only a matter of klipa. Melicha does not have the ability that bishul does. Bishul, according to some, or actually the majority of poskim, I think, would hold that if you're cooking something and you know that you never filled up the pot to the top, you cooked something treif, whatever, the whole thing mixture is asur. When you figure 60, you have to figure 60 against the entire pot. According to, I think, the majority of the poskim. They hold, and this is what perhaps we didn't clarify enough on Tuesday, they simply hold that piapua means the spreading of the flavor within the walls. Yeah, within the walls of the keli, through the heat of cooking, it spreads. In other words, cham kuloi is true about any metal. But cham kuloi can come about in different ways. It can come about by putting a cold spoon into a hot mixture, but the spoon is cold. Even though the bottom is going to heat up because you're mixing it, but really this is a cold spoon. Whereas if the pot is completely on fire, you're cooking something, the nature of the heat of cooking is that cham kulu in that case will spread throughout the whole pot. So the piapua, the flavor spreading throughout the keli will happen through cooking and will not happen through melicha, and will not happen in this kaf either. In other words, why don't we say cham isos cham kuloi?
Now, by the pot, we're not talking specifically about a metal pot. It would be any pot, right?
No, only metal, because metal conducts heat. In other words, cham isos cham kuloi is a fact.
That is a metal fact.
The whole thing becomes hot.
But when a pot stands on the fire, the whole pot gets hot, regardless of how hot the food
Exactly.
is inside.
Exactly.
So that doesn't have to be a metal pot, though. Wouldn't the whole pot become hot no matter? If heat rises, it's standing on the fire.
Yeah, but
the heat travels within the pot. The pot will get hot even if it's a
but the question is, you're right. The whole pot will eventually get hot.
It's different from the spoon.
Yes, it's different from the spoon because at some point the whole pot will become hot. That's true. Especially as we said on Tuesday, if you put the lid on, the whole thing. So then nobody differentiates there between metal or not. As you said, the whole thing at some point becomes hot. But with the spoon, what's the real difference? Why aren't we machmir? Cham kuloi. That's a fact. It's a fact. But it's not hot enough if it was a cold spoon. So in our case, we asked about it. Why shouldn't it be? Because it's a cold spoon, that's why. Whereas if the pot is on the fire and it's metal, well, even if it's not metal, but it's metal, in this case it's that we apply the rule of cham kuloi. Over there we apply it in complete force. In other words, we say it spreads throughout the whole keli, even if you are completely aware that you've only cooked 50% or 25% or whatever. No. If it was long enough there on the fire that the whole thing became hot, and believe it or not, within a few minutes the whole thing will become very hot. Even though the waters didn't reach the top, the whole thing is usher. The whole pot is usher.
Does it have also any with it whether you're putting something directly on fire or a food that is in a pot that is on fire?
One more
You're
time.
taking the spoon and sticking it in the spoon isn't touching the fire. So maybe the spoon is not going to heat up to the same extent as a pot that is personally standing directly on fire.
You know that question does come up.
With actually holding the spoon, so it can't be that pot.
Right.
What if you're using gloves? But anyway, your question does come up. There are times where you may not have touched the bottom of the pot. You just touched the spaghetti that was cooking. Would it be a problem or not? The food may not be good to eat if it's one is basar, one is halav, or But what about the keli? I didn't touch the keli, and it was just for a little bit. These things can come up, and they don't. If you have another suffix, you may not have such a problem. If you know for sure it didn't touch the keli and it wasn't that long. Yeah, of course, it should make a difference. I don't, because if anything, you would have not bar not here going into the keli, and there's not enough heat. If you close it, it all depends. That's why when a person comes to ask a shana, you really have to know all the details. Yeah, you really have to know all the details. I just on the top, I just touched it, but I just realized that on time it wasn't long enough. He wasn't even hot, the spoon. Then of course it shouldn't be a problem. It wasn't hot enough. Anyway, there are many kinds of scenarios. So that's really the main difference between a kaf and a pot. Kaf, even though chametz is chankula, but if the kaf is cold, there's no reason to believe, there's no reason to say that we would have to figure against the whole thing. It's too much of a chumrah. All right. Now, so the Ramah only points out Melicha. Melicha is not as powerful as Bishul. The Shach brought down something else. The Shach brought down Kavush. Now, Kavush, what does Kavush mean? Kavush means that you put two food items together for a certain amount of time. And when they're sitting together in liquid, then the nature, the physics or the chemistry, I should say, of this combination is that one will absorb from the other, or the two can absorb from each other. So kavush, we're learning Isur v'heter here. In Isur v'heter, if you have us, Isur, and heter being kavush, it's a problem. Eventually we'll learn it. In Siman Kuf Hey, when we talk about the various degrees of heat, we will also talk about various forms of combinations other than heat. One of them being kavush. Irui is another one. So even though we covered briefly what they are, on Tuesday I want to repeat or review some of these points and elaborate a little bit more. What happens in kavush? Kavush is powerful enough to absorb. In other words, you have heter with kavush together. The heter will be absorbing from the isur the flavor over how much time? Over 24-hour period of time. What I did not explain, however, is that this 24-hour period of time, which is me'es le'es, which is what kavush usually means, is not always me'es le'es. Sometimes it's less, depending in what it was kavush. The simple case of kavush is water. But what if you have tzir or chometz, vinegar or brine, which is much more powerful in itself? Then it's all you need is enough time that it would take this combination to boil on the fire. Shi'artiach halaor.
It can't be any faster than that.
Exactly. Yeah. That's all you need. In other words, not 24 hours. So even though we talked about the concept of 24 hours, and by the way, there's a sheet of 3 days. But anyway, we use that on Pesach, a sheet of 3 days, when you're trying to make hagala. Not hagala, but using water, throwing it out, using water. Yeah. But anyway, otherwise, kavush is me'es le'es, but that's only water. There's a machloikas of what happens with vinegar. In Seer, it appears to be that the vast majority holds that it would be sufficient if you had enough time to boil this 5-10 minutes, however long it boils. Then it would be usher even in kavush because it's brine, because of the mixture in brine.
Who just said in Pesach 3, that's the chumrah, that we require that you do it over a period of 3 days, not l'kum. Not that we say if it wasn't in there for it's okay, but l'chumrah.
No, in some cases, yeah, obviously it's a chumrah that is required, but it could be a kula for those who hold you can't do it at all.
For sure.
Then if you at least did it that way, it's okay. Right.
It's a chumrah doing it just over a 24-hour period.
Right. So what about kavush as far as the Raisa the Rabbanan? Now that's a machlokes in the Gemara. If it's bishul or not, if kavush is kimevushul or not. And since we hold kavush as kemevushal, then we hold it's deraisa. Okay? According at least to some opinions. Okay? So once you say kavush is kemevushal, it's midaraisa. But you know where it's not? On basar b'chalav. Basar b'chalav, you really need bishul. So kavush of basar b'chalav would be by rabbinic decree. Also, the combination of the two.
That's your machlokes.
Not in basar b'chalav. No. Yeah, no. There are some that may say that it's maybe the same, but from what I recall, this is the maskana. In conclusion, in basar b'chalav, kavush would be midrabanan. So that's an additional point over here. That's good to know. I mean, even though kavush, the shach says, would be much more powerful than melicha, so neged kuloi, you would need the whole thing. Still, you may not need, if you the question is, what would happen if you knew exactly? Anyway, if you knew exactly how much you cooked, we spoke about that too, if that would make a difference. Sometimes we don't know, and then that's where the question comes about. What if you did know? But anyway, the Shach points out that kavush would be more chamer than melicha in itself.
Thing that as far as a form of cooking is concerned, it's the Rabbanan. Because the Torah speaks, you cannot cook meat and milk together. It doesn't mean to be speaking about assuring pickling. That's not the topic that the Torah is assuring. But independent of that, pickling meat and milk together is an Isser d'Oraisa as well. Independent of whether it falls in the category. In other words, there wouldn't be an Isser of benefit of hana because it's not cooking the oraisa.
No, but
pickling is an isur d'oraisa too.
Not necessarily.
Can you make that distinction?
But that's what we're saying here, that it's not. That it would only be asur midrabanan. It's not just what you have now, the benefit, but the actual process. That's not the isur of bishul. That's not the isur of bishul.
Right.
Yeah.
What I mean to say is there are two concerns with pickling.
Right.
There is the pickling in terms of pickling, and then there is pickling as a different form of cooking. Pickling as yet another form of cooking is the Rabbanan.
All right, yes.
But besides that, it could be, I don't know, that maybe pickling in its own right, not as a replacement, as a substituting, but pickling in its own right continues to be an Isser d'Oraisa, only legabe, it's being a form of cooking, it's a d'Rabbanan.
With what effect?
I'm not sure what you...
Continues to be this.
Yeah, how would it make a difference?
Well, if you have always in a suffix, in a case of a suffix the Rabbanan lekula.
Well, I mean,
if you have a suffix whether it was in there not long enough to have pickled or not, maybe it was only a half a day, maybe a full day. So suffix d'oraisa would have to be the Homer, suffix d'Rabbanan.
Anyway, we hold,
but still, it wouldn't have the din of asur ba'achila, asur ba'hana, like a cooking d'oraisa has it exclusively.
well, remember, it would be asur to eat midaraisa.
So it would be asur to eat.
Because we said kavush kemevushal midaraisa. But the process of kavush kemevushal, are you over on bishul basar b'chalav?
That's
no.
what I'm saying. That's exactly the distinction.
I would agree with you. Because what you've done is, if you hold kavush kemevushal midaraisa, then what you've done is... Well, it's questionable, because if you're not over in the Isra of Bishul, it's still a Isra Achila either way. So I don't know what you really gain.
Because to eat salami with cheese is a D'Rabbanan.
Right.
You're not violating the Isra d'Oraisa.
Right. Only if it's cooked together. Exactly.
Right. So if I have meat has been pickled in
could be. That's a
milk,
good point. Yes, possibly.
So
I see what you mean. It could be. But because you say kavush kemevushal, it could be, because kavush kemevushal d'oraisa, according to those opinions, Well, kavush usually is me'es le'es, 24 hours, for it to consider kavush kemevushal. But if it's in brine or in vinegar, maybe less. Could be a few minutes.
It could be as little as this. Less than.
Then it's not mevushal at all.
If
All you would need is an adacha. You would be able to rinse it out in the faucet. We'll learn about it later on.
In other words, pickling things together cannot be worse than cooking them on the fire.
Worse, no. That's correct.
So if it's going to take this long
to
under
cook.
the fire, it's going to take that long. So if there's no fire, can't be
Okay.
any faster.
Briefly, besides Melicha and Bishul, Kavush, what else did we spoke about? We spoke about Irui. So just to clarify a little bit about Irui, we hold Irui is like a Kli Rishon. Kli Rishon is the pot that was in the fire, And even though a pot on the fire is definitely mevashel and it's definitely a problem, irui is less mevashel than the kli rishon itself, right? And we hold that it's mevashel kedei klipa. It has the ability to cook just a small, thin layer of the piece of meat or whatever it is that you're cooking. Now, in Hilchos Shabbos, you come across a concept of kalei bishul. There are certain things that cook very quickly.
Tea leaves.
Tea leaves is an example. That's why you can't make yourself a cup of tea on Shabbos with fresh tea leaves, unless they were cooked before Shabbos. You cook them, so ein bishul achar bishul, right? How do you make tea on Shabbos? There's several ways, the 3 ways. One is to prepare the essence of the tea before Shabbos, right? Everybody know what I mean by that? The essence?
Yeah.
The concentrate? Yeah, tamtzit, right? Second is by using a kli shlishi, because kli sheni is not mevashel, but it's mevashel kalei bishul. So kli sheni, all of you know what a kli sheni means, the second cup, right? We are very machmer on Shabbos because it can be still very, very hot, and it has the heat, enough heat to be mevashel at least kalei bishul. So what do? You do kli shlishi according to everybody is fine.
According to those that hold that there is such a concept. I think there are some opinions
You're
that
right.
there is no klishi.
Right. Yeah, you're right. But we hold it's okay. Kli shlishi should be okay. What's the third possibility? You use Nestea. You know, whenever I tell this to Israelis, they know about Nescafe. Nescafe is not Turkish coffee. You know, Nescafe is coffee that is already been, it's already cooked and roasted and whatever. I told them in America we have something called Nestea as well. It's powdered tea. It's already cooked.
It's a miracle tea.
Why is it a miracle tea?
Nest.
Oh, Nest, yeah. You have it with sugar, with lemon, without sugar, whatever. But you have Nest tea just by yourself, and it tastes good. If you just want to have a cup of tea, just put a spoon of Nest tea, and there's no problem with bishul.
On Shabbos it did.
I think that it tastes good is also subject to machloikas.
Yeah, that's already tam bereach. Yeah. Anyway, then the question is if you should pour it directly on the powder, or you should first put the water and then the powder. That's already something else. But for sure, if you use Nest tea, you don't have a problem. So anyway, irui, is it like a kli rishon or not? So there's a diyun in the poiskim. We hold that it's mevashel kedei klipa, and some actually hold that bishul kedei klipa is the raisa. So by irui, some do hold that the irui that is mevashel kedei klipa is the raisa.
So there is such a din of klipa d'oraisa. So it's not only a question of majority and sig, but there is yet another quantity that do with a kedei klipa.
Yeah, apparently, even though we've covered, remember when we learned in the very, very first year, we spoke about shiurim. Shiurim is halacha leMoshe Messinai. It doesn't appear anywhere that a kedei klipa is one of those shiurim. However, what happens is, what I would like to say, if you're in anxiety, is there's a difference between Isur v'Heter and Shabbos. In Shabbos, one of the melachos is bishul, right? You're not allowed to cook. What is cooking? For those of you who want to know why is cooking, it's not just cooking, it's any time you take anything and transform it to something else through heat. So you can be cooking metal too. Okay? That's what bishul is. That's what the Isur of bishul is.
Making it softer or harder.
Exactly. So, irui on Shabbos is not called bishul, but in Isur v'Heter, I've accomplished through irui, which is like a kli rishon, a blia of that Isser into this product. It's a fact. So you see how where there's a big difference? In Isser v'Heter, of course it's Asur. But it's only Asur Kedei, the Blia itself. In other words, the Chachamim were able to be Mechadish here, that even though Irui is something substantial, it's not powerful enough like Bishul, like the real thing. But it does do something. It does do something, and there's a lot of rayas that it does. It does do something. And therefore, you would have to remove a klipa. But it's not the whole thing. So the Irui concept could be that it's the raisa. Some say that it's the raisa. But there will be a difference between Shabbos and Isur v'Heter. On Shabbos, it's not bishul. You're not over on bishul. But it's asur. Midrabanan. In other words, you can't do it.
Because on Shabbos, bishul way it was done to make it.
Yeah, apparently.
It has to be with fire.
No, it
So
doesn't
here's
have
the
to.
told,
No,
it's
not
told.
really. Well, not really. It doesn't have to be. I mean, it doesn't have.
Because much of the person has a long.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously, here it's no longer under fire.
Yeah,
you could
but
say.
it's a told up fire.
Yeah, you're right. Here it's no longer under fire, so it's just the heat that you're using.
That came originally from the fire, so it's
That can,
it's a
all right,
type of
could
fire,
be,
so-
yeah.
Because in the sun, l'choira, in the sun, wasn't for the rabbinical, in the sun, l'choira, in the sun, you're allowed to cook.
Right. You can make an omelet.
Yeah. Well, there was a famous case in Israel, Shulchan
Yes,
got disconnected from the electricity.
right, I didn't hear about
So
that
it
one.
was so it happens that the Talmud Chacham,
Right.
so he took all the children, they went out and they heated up the stove that way.
Yeah. Is that right?
But, yeah, but subsequently he was.
You don't do it. Of course
people
not.
with him because
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't an Issur D'Oraisa,
Of course, you don't do it,
official,
yeah.
But it was only to heat up, not to actually cook the food. I don't know. It was.
Yeah.
I don't know. You didn't say whether cooked up, but you can't do that quite that.
Right. Anyway, just one more detail about the tchivas akaf, that we don't say cham mitzvah cham kuloi. It's not enough for the flavor to travel over the spoon. Masha'inkin in bishul. The Magen Avram, I think, brings down that if you know for sure that you've only cooked until halfway the pot, according to him at least, we don't say that it travels even on the whole pot. The pot. Even though in the pot we said earlier that it's hot, it's on the fire, if you know for sure it was still there, it doesn't go beyond the rotiv, beyond the sauce, beyond the water, beyond the liquid.
With no lid.
With no lid, yes, right. Okay, what I want to do just in the next few minutes is go over this very fascinating din of the Ramah.
But when
Yeah.
so the Leah, the spread in the pot.
Right. That's a Magen Avram. If you have the time, this idea of spreading is not just in Isser Beheter in Taaruvot. You find it in Pesach, and you find it in Yain Nesach too. So it's not like these poiskim are not. I think the Magen Avram is dafka in Pesach, in Hilchos Pesach, I believe. Yeah, it's not even here. Yeah, there's no Magen Avram here. Yeah. Okay, just a few minutes about what we learned last time about the fascinating scenario that the Ramah brings down, where you have some chalev, fat, forbidden fat, that got mixed into kosher food, heter. There's 60, so you're all safe. But you're not done yet. Pour some cold water, he says, so you can make the chalev congeal and float to the top, and then remove it. Because the Ramah holds, by the way, it's not his idea. I mean, he brings it down. He brings it down, Agos Mordechai, and the Aruch also, they bring it down. This is the solution. Sometimes these things work, and any time you're able to remove the Isser, it goes very well with the first halacha Siv Dalet. Like the Mechaber says, you recognize it, you remove it. Here, because I can remove it, it's like I recognize it. So even though there's no tam, there's shishim, I still have to do whatever I can to remove it, if it's possible. So in this particular situation where you have chalev and other food, chalev can be brought to the top by pouring cold water. I never tried it, right? But that's what he says.
Maybe you see it in the refrigerator if you put the refrigerator.
Right, there are.
There's no power.
You have to get rid of it. So he says this is like an Isur Be'in. This is like a situation where you can identify, so you have to remove it. Very, very interesting. Here, as the Aruch HaShulchan and others point out, you don't have the problem of EF Shaleseichtoi because it's been removed completely. It's not a question, right? You don't have a problem of Ein Mevatni Yisur Lechatchila because it's gone. I mean, the Yisur is not being bottled; it's gone. The Chiddush, however, is about Chanan, which Ilan had a difficult time. What about Chanan? Chaticha Nasa Nevela.
But that's when it becomes challah.
Yeah, so we.
That's when I get my problem with
Oh, okay, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Very good. The problem is, well, even why would it be a problem only with chalav? Because of Shari Surim, you mean?
Because
According to the ones that
holds.
according to Mechaber. Okay, very good. So let's
And by the way, the Shach says
Right.
that according to the Ramah, when he says Hanan b'Shar Isurim,
Right.
that even according to the Ramah, this means only a Rabbanan dikachan. So it falls from that the Shach at least is to hold that Hanan by Basar b'Chalav is not just a Rabbanan. Otherwise, why would he comment on the Ramah saying by Shar Isurim Hanan? Say there. Remember that when you have Basar b'Chalav Hanan, so the Ramah comes and says, and we hold also Hanan b'Shar Isurim.
Right.
And the Shach on that spot says, the Ramah, when he speaks here about Hanan b'Shar Isurim, he means only a rabbinical Hanan. So the Choyre, according to the Shach, in Basar b'Chalav, it would be more than just a rabbinical.
No, we've explained before that even Basar b'Chalav can become later on midrabanan.
Oh, that's when when it becomes a shar surim. According to
Right.
those who
When it becomes a shar
surim,
surim.
it's a shar
It's a
surim.
shar surim, right?
Right. That's
Yeah.
something. But when the meat eats the milk.
Initially,
that's
no.
not right.
Initially, that's even according to the Mechaber. Yeah. So anyway, the Isser V'Heter seems to be saying a chiddush. This solution, you can apply it. You may apply it even if you have less than 60. Great. I don't need a kafela in this kind of a scenario. Just put some water, congel it, remove it. So you were able to filter it out. Great. Get rid of it. It's not an Isser, it's not a problem where it's shredded completely, you can't filter it out. Here's a situation where you can remove it. Remove it, great. I don't need 60.
I don't understand why.
Wait a minute. Shach, Tas, Pri Chodesh, say, what are you talking about? They actually have a problem with the Bach, not with the original scenario. Because the Bach says, go ahead and do it. So, but wait a minute, there's still Tam. The Tas points out that even if you succeeded to remove the Chalev, you still have Tam left over. It's not anything. It's not any different than any other issue, like in the first portion of the seed that you removed it. It's not any different. Right. So what are you trying to tell us that this is a great solution if you have less than 60? If you have 60, there's no time. But if you have less than 60, how is that going to help you? So what's the answer?
Before we come to the answer, just
right.
to understand the problem. When the Mechaber says Isur shenitbashel im heter,
Okay.
afilu makiro v'hu shalem v'zarko.
Right.
How is my using cold water to raise and separate the chalev and remove it any better than the scenario described by the Mechaber in the beginning?
Because here the Ramah is saying it's a chumrah. Even if you have shishim, you still have to do it.
Yeah, but that would be the same thing that the Mechaber is saying, because the Mechaber is saying even if you threw it out, you still need 60.
No. But in the Mechaber situation is that you threw it out.
Yeah, but you still need 60.
No, not that you still need 60. The Mechaber is pointing out how much do you need? You need Kneged, the whole Isser. That's the only Chidush the Mechaber is trying to point out. The main Chidush is that you need Kneged the whole Isser.
But you need 60 against the whole Isser.
Right, we were Medayik that it's Sholem, we were Medayik Afilo Makiro, we were Medayik all kinds of additional details. Yeah,
There's no more Isser remaining in the pot, no more substance of Isser remaining in the pot.
Right.
And here I took the Nikar fat and Chalev, I made it float to the top and congeal, and I threw it out. I'm just trying to understand how is this situation different from that one.
That's what the Taz says. Says, what are you talking about? What makes this different than the first case? In other words, that's the point of the Taz and everybody else. The Prichodosh, the Shach, it says Mapitom.
Right.
He says, what? You still have to deal with the Tam. What did you accomplish here? Elamai, what do you have to say? The Pashut Pshat you have to say is that this method or technique of removing the substance is also able to remove the Tam. That's one. No. That somebody says. I forget who says that. Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah.
Then there's nothing to measure this.
Exactly. You don't have a problem. You don't have to use 60. Here we're talking about a situation. There's no 60 even. I have 25, 30. I can just get rid of it. Get rid of the whole thing.
If I get rid of the whole thing, I never have to worry about anything.
Right.
The first Mechaber and Dalit. I got rid of the whole thing. I still need to worry about the 60.
Because it's flavor.
Yeah, no, so. But
you couldn't get rid of the flavor. Here, the Isser V'Heter would say, this technique removes the flavor too.
The difficulty.
L'chara?
Oh, but this is
L'chara. I mean, otherwise.
So because you portion.
No? Yes.
Okay, I mean, we were earlier.
Yes.
Become dissolved.
Right.
Once they are dissolved, the top shell, that portion, chemical level, not at a physical level, is absorbed. That's not going to congeal. That's not when you have the fat on top of the chicken, or you make the chicken soup, and you take all that solid fat out, there's still fat in the chicken. It's absorbed into the molecular level.
Right.
So you're getting the same thing here. Some of the fat, you could do a very good job of causing the non-absorbed fat. In other words, the droplets of fat that are floating around in there, modifying, take them out. It'll be fat that's absorbed into the top shell. And if there's fat in there, for example, there's going to be top.
Right. So therefore,
so I'm saying you can tom this way.
Yeah.
You can get
that's why the Achronim have a problem, with what the Bach said.
But it doesn't take away.
It doesn't take away. Yeah, but the Isser V'Heter would claim apparently that maybe on the molecular level, like you're saying, there's tiny remnants left, but most of it is gone, as far as we're concerned. It doesn't count.
No, but that's the level which you have time. That's how much. That's
Yeah.
But maybe
Yeah,
Tom
not
that
enough.
survives
Yeah.
in that manner
On
is
that
not
level.
Tom Ke'iker.
Right. Maybe it.
Oh, is that-
Yeah. Could be very, very minute amounts. It's an interesting idea here. The Ramah is using this as a chumrah. The Ramah is using this as a chumrah. Even if you have 60, you got to do it. And the Yisrael Heter and the Bach clearly say, even if you don't have 60, which is a big chiddush. If this technique is a valid technique, if it really helps, you have to explain that he's saying that the time is gone too. But the Aruch HaShulchan has a whole different take on this, which is very interesting.
Which is, by the way, by me, they have actually the theory on the Chalev printed in there.
Yeah, of course, because that's what we hold.
Yeah. Okay.
We hold, I mean, that's the Poshet Shad. When you're learning this, it's Chalev. He learns that the Isser V'Heter and the Bach, we're learning this halacha if it's Chalav, not Chalev. Okay? That we're talking about milk and not Chalev.
You have the answer to that.
So, what was the answer to that?
Because it's...
How do you have milk in jail?
What do you call it again in Yiddish?
Because he called it a smetana.
Smetana.
It wasn't real milk.
That's by the way Polish. That comes from Polish.
Counselor, yeah. Sure.
The cream that floats on top.
Yeah, just a second over here.
So I wanted to show you something bizarre from our sheets that Shalom and I were sitting over. And you don't need to comment on it. It's interesting. The top here, the way he translates the Mechaber.
If the amount of the Isser?
No. And a kazais of what?
Kazais of milk.
Yes. Kazais
Right.
of Chalav.
Yeah, but that's the other example.
Then the Mechaber. But are we talking about milk Mechaber? A kazais, you talk about
Yeah,
a
sure.
drop of milk?
No, kazais of milk. That's a shear.
So we're talking here in the
A large amount of milk.
So we're talking here about by the Mechaber about kazais of milk? Is that what our topic is? Is it an Isser Shalit Bashel in Heter? Is a kazais of milk that went into meat? Anyway, you haven't seen that before.
1 second, no. Toichev kaf shel Isser behed. Let me see here. If the amount of the Isser in the spoon,
And the Isser
the known
being milk.
fact, for example, if... No. You're talking about, I think, the next Seif. Seif, hey, we haven't gotten to that yet. Okay, that's the next Seif. We'll talk about that next
We
thing.
haven't done that.
We haven't done that yet. That's Seif Hey. Yeah. Okay, so let me just let's just quickly see here 1 second. Yeah. Anyway, the Aruch HaShulchan just wanted to bring out that based on that nusach, girsa, that the Isser V'Heter and the Bach are talking about chalav, there is no tam. The tam is a problem with chalev. Chalev leaves behind, like you were saying, on some levels, some tam, but they're learning chalav, and chalav is completely gone. What chalav? He calls it smetana, the Aruch HaShulchan. It was the fatty chalav, the cream. And that doesn't leave behind even tam. That's the way he deals with it. He says he makes peace between them. There's no machlekes. They're talking about chalav, a fatty chalav, and they're talking about chaylev. With chaylev, it would be a problem because on some level there's some tam left of the chaylev behind, like you said. But just to finish up on this particular technique, we have lechora. If it's with milk, we have a problem of chanan. There's no issue mevatel iser. There's no problem with ef shalesoich. But what about chanan? Chanan, if you don't have 60, you have chanan. You have basar b'chalav, you have chanan. The Isser V'Heter is mechatish, and it's a chidush. That any time you can be mafrid the Isser completely, there's no chanan. Anytime you can separate the Isser in its entirety, yeah, but yes, exactly. For those especially who learn that the two are associated together, anytime you really completely, entirely remove the Isser as though it was never there, we don't say chanan. That's what he seems to be saying. So as far as chanan, that's the chiddush of the Isser V'Heter. That's how you would have to learn here too. It's completely gone, so there's no chanan, because he says that. I mean, they all explain that according to that sheet that there's no chanan either. It's not a problem because it should be a problem, or it may be, but it's not. And why? Apparently, because if you're able to remove the Isser completely, it doesn't pose a problem. All I wanted to add to this that we didn't explain on Tuesday is an additional idea which I saw brought down, I think by the Yad Yehuda, something similar to what he says. For those of you who learned about Hanan in Basar B'Cholav, do you remember learning about Hanan in Lach Belach?
How did we learn that?
Yeah, the Rashba. There's several poskim on when do we say Hanan. You don't say Hanan Yovish B'Yovish. You say Hanan basically in Yovish B'Yovish when you cook it, or in Yovish Belach.
If like falls into the chicken soup.
Right.
I'm
No, you. Lach Belach, two liquids, is Bechlal HaMachloekes in the Rishonim. If it's a problem of the tam, or a problem of just the Taaruvot, the mixture, they're two together. So Machlokes, Ramban, Ashba, Machlokes, whether it's a problem in the tam, even if you're cooking them, does it actually give flavor, or is it just because they're mixed together that it's also it's the mixture is forbidden here? The two are together, or is it and therefore I'm eating the iser, or is there actually flavor being transmitted?
Are we talking about Basar B'Cholav or are we talking Shari?
Talking about Shari Surim right now.
Shari
Surim, right. So it could depend a little bit on that machlokes, on whether we say that it's tam or whether it's also because there's a mixture. Because if it's just a mixture and I'm able to remove it, then it's not a problem. Because Hanan in Shari Surim, there's even one sheet, I think it's the Ravid, who holds that there's no Hanan whatsoever in Lach Belach. Even if you cook them. He's the only one, I think, even if you cook it, because the Rashba is machmir only if you cooked it. If they were not cooked, they just are together, the liquids, you don't say Hanan. This can happen with yain nesach and water mixed together. Where do you have that they were not cooked? Just a little bit of wine, water, the two liquids mixed together, but they were not cooked. So when the items are not cooked, according to some poskim, there will be no Hanan in Lach Belach. But if they're cooked, apparently a lot of them say that there is Hanan even in Lach Belach once they're cooked together. But Ravid would say there is no Hanan at all in Lach Belach, even if they're cooked. So based on that, Ravid, and based on what the Yad Yehud is explaining, that there's a machlokes in Rishonim, whether the Lach Belach is a problem in itself because of the Taaruvos or because of the tam. If it's only a Taaruvos issue, then if you can remove it, then there's not a problem. With Lach Belach, if you can easily remove it, it would never pose a problem. But if it's a tam, it's a problem. So if you can remove an Isser, this would therefore, the Isser Veheter, the Bach's opinion of you applying this technique may depend on all that.
Yeah.
Especially if we consider also the Mordechai. I was thinking maybe the Mordechai would help us too. The Mordechai, in speaking about Kalim, we'll be learning in Mitzvah Shem the next Seif, an interesting idea. Do we say Hanan and Kalim or not? You already know maybe by now from Basar B'Cholav that a lot of them hold that there's no Hanan in Blias, in a Iser Bolua. Right? In a Iser Bolua, there's no Hanan possibly. Just in the Meichel itself. And that's where the Ramah says in the next piece that if a piece falls in, that fell in here, fell in again in another pot, you're always going to need 60, right?
Yeah.
You're always going to need 60 if that same piece of Iser Bolua fell in here, fell in again.
Each time you need
60 because you don't know if there's still some plita of the tam in each one. It may be a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. In the original pot, however, if it falls twice, you don't need. And this is similar to the Ramaz Halacha in Basar B'Cholav, I think Tzadik Daled, that you stuck in the spoon twice. Yeah. The Mechaber is Machmir there, the Ramaz is Meikol. The Mechaber is Machmir because it's Basar B'Cholav. So you have Hanan in the blias of the spoon. The first time around 60, second time around again, because you have Hanan. Ramah says, no, we're not machmir in that at kedekah because there's no Hanan in blias. You're going to be surprised soon to learn that some say there is Hanan in blias, but there's some say there's even Hanan in the keli itself.
In other words, an Isser absorbed in the keli makes the keli a Hanan. The metal becomes
nobody holds like that. Lemaisa.
That's what you mean.
Right. The metal, but we don't hold like that. Some say only if there is heter and iser in the walls of the keli, then it becomes Hanan. So that according to the Mordechai, I just wanted to add, he talks about if we say Hanan and kelim or not. If it's a situation where ef shalagil is a keli, you cannot make the keli, you cannot make a gala. It's a klicheres, for example. So there may be a possibility that you say Hanan on the keli. There is such a possibility. If the keli itself if you cannot remove the iser ever, He says there is a possibility that the whole keli becomes chanan.
But he would still be saying that it's the substance of the keli that becomes chanan. And
Right. So there is such a possibility. We'll talk about that next time. But based on that, what is the Mordechai really saying? If you're able somehow to remove the tam from the keli through hagala, through the process of cooking, some of it is coming out, then you've resolved the problem of chanan, because a little bit of has come out. So if that's the case, can't we apply that concept of removal to the situation of the Isser V'Heter too? That if somehow you're able to accomplish that, that's what this svara is. You're able to remove it like you remove with hagala the tam from the walls of the keli. If you're able actually to remove it completely, and that's the whole question here between the other ones who say no way, and the ones who say okay, because they say there's still tam. But the Isser V'Heter must say either there is no tam, either because, like the Aruch HaShulchan says, it's chalav and it's completely gone, right? Or if you have a question about what about chanan, at least there's no chanan either. Why? Because chanan is only when something may be left over. It's a big chiddush. I mean, nobody says that except I think for the Isser V'Heter, that if the Isser is completely gone, you don't say chanan. But apparently the two may be tied together. If you don't say chanan, it's because the tam is gone. And if it's smetaneh, the tam is gone. If it's chaylev, it could be a problem, but then it's not chanan. So you see, so according to the ones who say it's aser, still it's because of the tam. According to the Isser V'Heter, you can use it less than 60 if, in fact, you succeeded in removing it. Through this technique, you may be able to remove it. So what we learn from this is that if it's possible at all to ever remove an Isser altogether, the entire DNA, somehow you're able to do it, it should be mutter and there shouldn't be a chanan problem. I mean, that's basically what I figured the machlokes and the poskim would be here. Okay, Hashem will continue next week. Yeah.